And now, God, open my mouth so that I can speak. Open our ears so that we can hear, and open our hearts so that we can change by your power and through your grace. Amen. Please be seated. Well, in case you missed it, yesterday was Valentine's Day. At least for the day, it seemed that everyone had love on their mind. Some reveled in the feeling of it, some longed for it, and sadly for some, they mourned the loss of it. It was a pretty big deal at preschool last week, too. At chapel this week, the kids came in and we sang our opening song and we did our prayer, and as we sat together, I asked them if they knew what holiday was coming up this week. Hands went up and shouts rang out, "Valentine's Day, Valentine's Day." And what is Valentine's Day about, I asked. One little boy jumped up and threw his arms up and shouted, "Love!" which started a chain reaction. The rest of them shouting out, "Love, love, love." It couldn't have been any better. They fell right into my plan. While their classrooms were caught up on the more sentimental aspect of love, they were sweetly working on their Valentine's gifts for their parents. I wanted to give them something a little bit different in chapel, a hook they could grab onto in order to understand a different kind of love. I used the scene in Matthew that comes just a few chapters after the passage we heard today, when Jesus is in the Jerusalem temple and gets questioned by a Pharisee about which was the greatest of all the commandments in the law. He responded by saying, "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. This is the greatest commandment, and a second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. On these two commandments hang all the law and the prophets." Love God, love one another. Without these two, none of the rest hold any meaning. Whatever you do, it must be filtered through love and express love. The beautiful thing about working with preschoolers, is that they get it. Talking to them about loving God and loving one another is actually pretty easy because for them, it's uncomplicated. The world hasn't taught them to guard their hearts yet. And the idea of loving other people is actually exciting to them. It put a gleam on their faces, and their little hearts were on display for everyone to see. It was as powerful as it was tender. I was still carrying that with me as I approached our gospel passage for today, where Jesus goes up on a mountain with Peter and John and James to pray. While they're up there, Jesus' appearance suddenly becomes dazzling white and his face is gleaming. His friends see him talking to Moses, the vessel for the revelation of God's law, and Elijah, the greatest of all the prophets, two of the most revered figures in Judaism. When this incredible thing occurs, Peter wants to preserve the moment. Not having the ability to take a quick selfie and post it for everyone to see, his way to capture the moment is to suggest building houses for Moses and Elijah and Jesus, as if Jesus was just going to suddenly stay put. Before Jesus can say anything, a cloud engulfs them, and a loud voice claims Jesus as God's Son, and Peter, James, and John are told that they should listen to him. When the cloud disappears, they go back down the mountain, and Jesus tells them not to say anything about what they saw or heard. I picture them in that moment, walking together in silence, trying to process it all, and being told not to say anything about it. I'm not sure that I could do it. Why did Jesus ask that of them? What really happened up on that mountain? When Jesus' appearance changed, it was spectacular, to be certain. But I would ask this question: did Jesus really change? There is no evidence that he was meaningfully different after this moment than he was before this moment. They see him talking to Moses and Elijah, the literal manifestation of the law and the prophets. Remember that there were many who thought Jesus was the new Moses and many others who thought Jesus was the next Elijah, but not necessarily the Messiah and certainly not the Son of God. Then, just in case the other two things weren't enough, they hear the voice of God, making sure that they know that Jesus was the real deal. Talk about offering a hook. No matter what they thought about Jesus before, seeing him basically gleaming, talking to Moses and Elijah had to make clear that he was neither Moses nor Elijah in new form. Seeing him like that, talking to Moses and Elijah, and then hearing the voice of God proclaim him as God's son, on top of all of that, would have guaranteed that they walked away from this with a whole new understanding of who Jesus was and of his relationship to all that came before. Now, for us hearing this story, it's really easy to focus on Jesus. He's the star of the show, right? But what if this whole moment isn't really about Jesus at all? In our opening collect today, we prayed that we, beholding by faith the light of Jesus' countenance, would be strengthened to bear our cross and to be changed into his likeness. I think many of us in this room and joining us from home today would like to be just a little bit more like Jesus in one way or another. We know that the demands and challenges of our daily lives, the crosses we bear, can actually distract us from seeing the beauty of the light that is so often right there in front of us, and how at times that can keep us stuck. With that collect, we're not simply praying to behold Jesus so we can settle him in a nice little spot like up on a mountain or in a book or in a church. We're praying for the space to see Jesus clearly so that following him would inform the way that we live. I think that's kind of what happened up on that mountain. They went up to pray, to get away from the rush of the crowds, from the chaos, really from everything. While they're up there in that quiet place, they put down all the stress and found rest and prayed. And suddenly they saw Jesus for who he really is. And not only that, they heard the voice of God telling them that what they think they saw is actually real and true. We face so much distraction today. Overprogrammed schedules. The push of a culture that encourages us to pack as much as we can into every single day so that we can say we're productive. Most of us are never separated from devices that keep us connected to everything that happens every minute of the day. I wonder what would happen if we were intentional about opening up space in our lives, about clearing out the distractions that keep us jumbled and anxious, about refusing to be distracted so that we can see Jesus clearly, hear his call to love one another, and understand deep in our hearts what is real and true. I think that's what happened for Peter, John, and James. Something profound happened to them on that mountain when they cleared out their distractions, and they understood something on the way down that they had not on the way up. And what they understood shaped everything that happened after. They could have run down the mountain and told everyone what they saw, and let's be honest, that's probably what most of us would do. In fact, Peter started moving in that direction when he suggested building the 3 dwellings to memorialize the place. But had they done that, had they run down the hill and told everyone about the sensational thing that they had just seen, then that would have become the story. Jesus knew that. He knew that this amazing story would have been believed by some and likely dismissed by many and used as a weapon against them by some powerful others who would seek to put down what they cannot understand or control. What mattered is that they came back as different people, and it shaped all that came after. Not because they shouted it from the rooftops, or stood on street corners, or held Bibles in their hands as they sought to diminish the humanity of vulnerable people, but because what they now knew shaped how they interacted with the world they lived in. The revelation of Jesus' divinity on that mountain shaped not only how they showed up for Jesus, but how they showed up for the people they would encounter on the other side of this experience. Now, it's obvious that since we're hearing about it, that eventually they did share what happened on the mountain that day, but that came later, after the experience had settled in their hearts and moved them into action. I think that's an important takeaway from this passage this morning. When we think of spreading the good news, of being evangelists, most of us will think first of using words. But what if we didn't? I believe we're called to spread the good news by using our hearts, by the way we live our lives before we ever speak a word of Jesus to anyone. A question that's always on my mind is what would happen if we led with the heart of Jesus instead of the story of Jesus. Reflect on that for just a moment. I wonder if Jesus might be more easily revealed and understood if we focused less on telling people who Jesus is with words than letting him appear in all of his glory through who we are and how we are to other people in the world. Jesus says that the greatest commandments are to love God with our whole heart and mind and soul and to love one another. Has there ever been a better example of how to do that than Jesus himself? Our preschool kids get this, and I see them do it every day. And it's beautiful. Friends, Jesus is the hook, especially for Christians. Jesus is the hook on which all the law and the prophets hang. He is the embodiment of love, not might, not control, not judgment, love. If we let the unconditional love of Jesus shine out through our hearts in how we show up for our neighbor in need, for that unhoused guy outside our car window, for the Latina woman being harassed by ICE while shopping for groceries, or the teenager getting bullied in the hallway of our school, then just maybe Jesus is made way more real to someone than could ever be possible by simply sharing his story. At the end of the day, that's the point. I don't believe this story is really about Jesus being changed. It's about us experiencing a change in our hearts what that change calls us into. About us doing the active work of loving one another and thereby sharing the unconditional love of Jesus with all people. So today, I invite you all to come to the table and be refreshed. Whoever you are, and wherever your journey of faith is taking you, this feast we celebrate today is for you. Meet Jesus here. See him clearly. And let yourself be filled with his love, and then go out from here with his heart leading the way. Because to share anything less than that, well, those are just words.